welcome everybody. I'd like to give a small compliment to Mr. Dattani for that very succinct tribute to Donny Rumsfeld, whom we lost recently, with the known knowns and known unknowns. And well, the big unknown in business, Europe and India, and not the UK, because you guys left us. So welcome everybody. Let's start with the three beautiful ladies. If you could just start with briefly introducing yourselves, and then we go to Dan, of course, who gets the fourth place because we had three beautiful women before him. So Chiara, if you could start off with a brief introduction.
All right, so thank you, Vas Shenoy, and good morning, everyone else who's been here. Rightfully, my name is Chiara. I am Italian, but I've spent the last 4 years in France and the previous 7 years before that in India. My connection with India nowadays is overall of about 10 years. And while I was in India, I worked in the corporate sector, supporting foreign companies, setting up and expand their business in India. Firstly, as a consultant, and later on as a banker. And that's just why I believe that's why I'm here today, to share a little bit of insights that I gathered through that experience, as well as some further insights I gathered while I have been in France, where I started working up, taking up a solo enterprise and supporting companies from India to better understand the European counterpart from a cultural as well as a language point of view.
Thank you. Valentina, if you could give us a brief introduction. First of all, welcome.
Welcome. Hi, everyone. Just to specify, my surname is Manduchi. Casey, sometimes people say Manduchi. It's like Mandukya Upanishad, so I'm really attached to India thanks to that. So my surname is like actually a name of an Upanishad. So I am 34 and I'm the founder of Apsaras event. I'm also Italian, so it's very happy to see another fellow Italians here. And mainly I am a dancer. I'm training in Indian classical dance, Kathak and Bollywood. Plus we do organize and provide services to international destination weddings, mainly South Asian weddings. So from mainly our clients are from the US, America, or India, or Singapore. And of course, they come here to celebrate the special days in Italy. That's it.
Monica, welcome. And if you could say a few words about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll start by thanking you that I think it's the first panel in my life that actually mentions my second first name. My father will be so proud because it's basically the feminine version of his. So my name is Monica family name is Monica Moisin, and Florina is this second middle name that nobody uses until today. And it will be a great joy for him. I hope he saw this online. I am a lawyer by profession. I practice in the European Union. I am a member of the Bucharest Bar Association, being born and raised in Romania, and in the Berlin Bar Association, living and working in Berlin. I am the founder of the Cultural Intellectual Property Rights Initiative, as well as a cultural sustainability consulting company. And my relationship with India started around 2018 when I started this campaign called One Voice for Craft, looking to interview artisans on the ground in India in the hope of being able to legally support the rights of artisans, custodians of craft, and finding a way to create IP tools that are focused exclusively on traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions. And our work last year, our most recent research there, we focused on the contribution, Indian contribution to the sustainability narrative. And we see that always we talk about the sustainable development goals, and we always try to align to the West, by why not looking the other way around? Because India has extreme richness in culturally embedded sustainability practices, and we just need to find the ways to communicate that to Europe and build knowledge partnerships on that purpose. And this is what I do. I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, Monica. Welcome again. And Dan, finally, last but
All
not
right. Hey everybody, it's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity. To all the other panelists, hello. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I hope we'll have a good time. So what I do is, and the reason I have a stage name, so my official name is Joe Daniel Ramamurthy, but my stage name is Dan Ram because I work across multiple borders. And Ramamurthy can be a little bit of a mouthful. For the Indian crowd, they struggle with Daniel, and for most of the rest of the world, they struggle with Ramamurthy. So Dan Ram became a little bit easier. My passion in life, my calling, my purpose is to create important dialogue specifically about how innovation can help charter a better future. And the way I do that is I host, so kind of like what Vas is doing and the others are doing, I host tech conferences across multiple verticals, whether it's the future of mobility, whether it's the future of smart cities, whether it's the future of fintech, healthcare, across the board. If you think about some of the tech conferences like South by Southwest, Web Summit, Slush, the World Economic Forum, TEDx stages, those are the areas that you'll find me hosting, interviewing, introducing. I love working with change makers, but really where I get excited, where I get fulfillment is when that inspiration trickles down to the everyday person, so that they can elevate, they can move forward in their own lives. And so that's what I do. I'm a bridge across cultures. I'm a bridge across those who have and those who have not. I'm a bridge among those who are intellectually ahead and the rest of us who can implement and execute to make that happen. So I'm really, really excited to be here and looking forward to this conversation. Also, I am Indian in India right now at this moment, but mostly I split my time between Germany, occasionally Poland, Ireland, UAE. That's where my homes are and my offices. But right now I'm in India because of the pandemic. Haven't been able to leave, but also very grateful for the amazing time with my parents. And the strange accent is because I grew up in 10 countries as the son of an Indian diplomat. So although I may sound like the least Indian in the room, I probably am the most Indian at this moment, given that I'm actually here at this moment.
Thank you so much, Dan. So let's go with Chiara first. Chiara, you've worked in corporate India for a few years. I'm assuming you were hired for a specific reason. Please do tell us something about your role and the underlying rationale.
All right. Like I mentioned in the introduction, I worked as a management consultant in India starting 2013. And after a few years, I was given a role in one of India's main commercial banks. And in both cases, we were supporting foreign companies to set up or expand their business in India. In my first job, we were doing so from a management and the strategy point of view. So while looking at the regulations and finding partners, etc. And as a banking professional, it was on the strategic and also funding point of view. But the rationale in both cases was the same. That is, the companies realized that although their foreign clientele was for a major part comfortable using English as their main language for business communication, there was always something maybe missing or something more that could have been achieved by creating a closer bond either with the customers or with the partners, etc. And this is why they decided to take up a resource like me to be able to, on one side, act as a link between both the worlds, but also at the same time to open up opportunities on both fronts. So like we had Costa just mentioned in the previous panel that sometimes if you're not aware of a certain market, you cannot be aware of what kind of opportunities are there for you. So my role was also this in a certain way to make each party understand, okay, this is how it works here and this is what could be done by you and on the other side as well. So that is just to summarize the role.
Okay, just a quick follow-up on that. So what were your takeaways from your India experience?
Takeaways, too many. So maybe what I can do is I can tell you a little bit how I was able to fulfill this role in the first place, and also what I can suggest and what I keep suggesting to people who ask me about India, etc. Because sometimes I've held conferences on this topic as well. So one thing is that from very early on, I was always passionate about foreign languages and understanding the culture, that was behind them. So in school, for example, I went to a language school, and there we were studying English, French, and German from a language, but also from a cultural point of view. And when I moved to India in, it was 2011, I did the same with Hindi. I started learning the language, and at the same time, I really made effort to understanding what's going on around me. How do people reason? What is the logic that they have? How do they operate? And I also started adopting some of these practices myself. And this is a critical step that was very important for me, and that I keep suggesting to whoever wants to address this, that you have to understand that English alone doesn't is not enough to really feel part of the local community, and at the same time to make you really a deeper element of that group. So now, talking from a job perspective, my role was this. So on one side, being knowledgeable about management related issues and India related issues when you're trying to setting up a company, but at the same time to really be fully rooted into the local practices. So to be able to, to tell people, okay, this is how things are done here, and this is how they think. And the takeaway that I would say that I've learned after a few years, and that I would like to share, is that whenever we are addressing a situation like this, is we have to keep in mind that our logic and their logic are not clashing. They are different, but if you're not able to understand why certain things operate in a certain way, is because we are not able to see what is the mechanism behind, what is the logic that's going on behind, what is the background of a certain thing. And for me, this is something that I started realizing after a few years being in India and being understanding more about the background and reading more newspapers, talking with people, etc.
Thank you so much, Kara. Dan, I'll pick up from what she just said, because you mentioned that you're the son of an Indian diplomat and you grew up in 10 countries. So you're a third country kid. So what was it, growing up as a son of an Indian diplomat, and what did it teach you about multicultural relationships, etc.?
So third culture kid, TCK, that is got to be one of the greater defining labels of my life. No one on this panel is going to challenge the importance of diversity. Nobody on this panel is going to challenge the importance of stepping out of your comfort zone in order to understand, empathize, and connect with the other, whatever the other is, whether it's gender, whether it's orientation, whether it's culture, whether it's nationality, whether it's opinion. We need to do that. I think the bigger question is, how do you do it effectively? And so I think this is probably where some of the greater learnings can happen. So if I can just throw a couple of things that maybe can spark, and I don't need to flesh it out. I think we all agree on this. I'm more interested in what the others have to say on some of these thoughts than my own views on it. But for sure, I have found when it comes to living, working, and interacting in other countries, any space that is foreign to myself, asking questions rather than assuming is essential. So rather than making my own conclusions as to why a certain festival is run or why someone acts a certain way, to ask questions without prejudging their motives. That's got to be one of those. Another one has to be about entire immersion. I have found that simply living in a diplomatic or international bubble does not give me an authentic local experience, or even speaking in my own language does not help me connect with the local humor. So an immersion means the way people dress, the places they hang out, the coffee shops they go to, the food they eat. That is the only fair way to truly engage in another country. So that's the second piece I found super, super important. The third is this larger concept of adapting. I do not think that identity is singular or static. I think our own identities constantly evolve. And part of that is knowing how to adapt. So I don't ever feel, oh, because I'm Indian, I get to be Indian wherever I go. No, part of Indian is also incredibly diverse and wide. The definition of what it means to be Indian is massive. And so let me find some new areas that are true to me. And what I mean by that is when it comes to adapting, it breaks down into three areas: letting go of the past, engaging with the present so that you position for the future. I know if I go, so in Zimbabwe, when I lived there, we had a beautiful over 1 acre property, a swimming pool, a tennis court, a beautiful Victorian style house. Almost every middle-class family had one of those homes. But when I moved to Morocco, we lived in a 3-bedroom apartment in the city center on the 3rd or 4th floor. I could just compare and say, oh, in Zimbabwe, I had a garden, Morocco hates nature. Or, oh, wow, this is such a empty space or vacuum. But that's not fair, because there are things one learns and experiences living in an apartment that one does not get living in an independent home, and vice versa. And that's just a tiny example of the most obvious thing. I know when we first moved to Morocco, we were like, oh my gosh, this is such a downsize. But that's not fair either. So letting go of the past is important. Engaging with the present, truly appreciating, recognizing what is unique about
Done? I think we lost Dan.
Morocco. On the other hand, because I'm adapting and evolving, I bring all of that with me, and that actually positions me for what lies ahead. I am better suited to connect in the countries I'm in because of my past adapting and engaging. So those are just a few quick thoughts I wanted to share. I would be very curious from the others as to what their tips and tricks are to truly connecting and engaging in the other lands.
I'll go over to Monica now. Thank you, Dan. And Monica, cultural intellectual property rights and Europe and India. Why don't you tell us something about this?
Right, thank you for the question. Cultural intellectual property rights is a new terminology, obviously, and needs a little bit of explanation. We talked about, you mentioned innovation, Dan. I think very few maybe are familiar with how much innovation we can have in the field of law and how we can change basically society and the rules that we go by, the colonial rules that we were many cultures forced to live under, and a system like the IP system that is built on construction that is favoring the industrial society, is kind of eliminating the cultures of the other from a sphere of protection. So in many countries in Europe and around the world, you'll find out that craft and traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions, so all these expressions that are handcrafted, handwoven, like what I'm wearing today or what is behind me, they are called traditional cultural expressions, and in many countries they are considered to be in the public domain. So what happens often is that fashion companies, and not only, many creative industries, tend to copy these aesthetics or replicate them by digitally printing them or so on, and nothing gets to the source communities, or the rightful value of this work and the centuries of heritage and knowledge is not factored in. We live in an economy where the actual good is more valuable than the time of the human and the investment of energy that goes into it, and that's something that should raise some questions. Are we really calculating the well-being of the people, or are we just literally calculating people as economic factors? So cultural intellectual property rights are a innovative construction, a new generation of rights. This is how I designed it. We call it sui generis protection system. Basically, what we do is we advocate for a unique system of protection for traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expression, so that we create fairness and equity in business relationships, especially when creative industries, or not only the pharma industry, is appropriating resources as well. Many other industries are doing the same. In architecture, we talk about vernacular architecture. The construction business is strong, but what happens with the traditional healthy ways of building houses? And we know in India, we have so much of this trend coming back, and you have the healthiest buildings in certain villages, and so many, change makers, forward thinkers who are now investing, multimillionaires who are investing in building their houses based on the old ways of doing things, combined with technology that today is spearheading. So this meeting between traditional knowledge and innovation is a sweet spot and a place for interaction, a place where we should be looking more into. And for that, we also need to have some legal framework in place. What we want to do is to be ahead of this movement of creating legislation. And this is what cultural intellectual property rights are. I hope I got a little bit of clarity on that.
Thank you so much, Monica. We'll come back to you with a follow-up question on this because it's very interesting. Valentina, what can be more cultural than a big fat Indian wedding? So, I've heard of a lot of people from Europe and the United States going to India and getting married and having destination weddings with elephants and camels and forts. Tell us something more about entertainment and destination weddings on Italy, India, and Europe in general.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Russ. Yes, we got much more fat weddings here. We got, mountains rented or entire villages. We got Shakira in Venice. So I guess Italy has been a very important destination weddings in the imaginary of Indians because a lot of actors got married here. The last one were Deepika and Ranveer Singh getting married in Villa Balbianello in Como. So I am first as an artist and secondly as organizer. So I basically help the wedding planners to get everything fit. Because as before Naina Gala said, this you get to know you have to really know the differences between each and every community. So it's important to know whether the wedding is mixed or whether it's South Indian or Gujarati, Punjabi. I think we suffered a bit in the past year because mainly all the weddings got shifted. But what I noticed is that the Indians from India or whether the European diaspora, they are really attached to the European dream, especially Italy, because come on, we are the most beautiful country around. We offer everything from the mountains, lakes. So we mainly got weddings, Tuscany or the Costiera, which is south, or the islands, Sardinia and Sicily, Puglia. For Tuscany is the main place because it's very well sold. But where I come from, actually, Chiara, where are you from exactly from Italy?
I am exactly from Sicily.
Sicily, oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and then the north. So we got everything. Like Italy, sometimes I think it's just like a little India. If you think we got the mountains, the Alps, whether you got the Himalayas, then we got the islands. It's the same shape, kind of. We are a peninsula, so.
So even Vas Shenoy is from Italy, is from Naples.
Yeah, I'm in Naples. So I was just about to say that, the most beautiful part of the country is in the south. So I think the Indians will slowly gravitate down south because eventually everybody gravitates down south. So I'm not very worried about Indians coming to Naples very soon and actually finding themselves at home here.
Yeah, but the thing is that with the immigration, as Chiara could also say this, we are far back, sorry for my English, from like the UK. We are not used to integrate 100%. So it's a very young immigration. So for example, in my case, where I have to, spread dance, having professional who go to weddings like musicians, artists, role players, it's either I have Italians who have studied this, or it's very hard to find Indians who are dedicated also to entertainment industry because it's first, second generation here. It's not like the UK. But I've decided to stay here and invest here. Sometimes I thought like, oh, let me go to UK and there is a better academics, better jobs. But I love Italy, so I want to see a little bit more India here, and I hope to do it in the right way with this business and also with my art, which is basically dance training.
Oh, fabulous. I will come back to your classical dance later. Chiara, quick
Yes.
question. I know that after the corporate world, you started out on your own as a consultant. Was this in Italy or was this in India? And tell us something more about it.
Okay, so in terms of administrative compliance, it's registered in France. But then, I mean, if I'm in France, I do the jobs from France, and it happened that I did some jobs from India as well from time to time when I'm traveling. So if my clients know that I am traveling at a certain time, or if they tell me, okay, we are planning this for this time, will you be there? So then we arrange. And just to join a little bit what I had shared earlier, and how, first of all, I would like to join this part of the discussion to what Dan Ram said. I fully agreed 100% with his experience because it was mine as well, in terms of really deep diving into the culture and changing your own identity, as to not to dilute yourself, but to enrich yourself with new things that you can discover. So one of the incidents that happened to me and that I keep remembering and cherishing is one of the works that I was doing for a client. uh, there was an Indian client from Gurgaon who had hired me to be an interpreter for a training, an internal training that was going on. So they had planned this training for 8 days, and there was the local workforce, so the trainees, and then a trainer who came from Italy. So they hired me to interpret what he was teaching. But the thing went much further, and we all, by the end of it, were left with a very positive experience. And I'll tell you what happened. So at some point around the end of this training, one of the trainees came to me and said, when this training started, we saw you, and we all had some reservations of how the program would have gone, because we saw you were foreigner, and we thought that there would be some understanding problem. We had experiences in the past where we had trainers who came here and they spoke English, so language was not a problem, but yet we had issues connecting at a deeper level with the trainer. And when we saw you, we thought that it would have been the same. But then we realized, as we were dealing with you, that you actually were talking to us just like you were a local person. We saw that you were able to understand our concerns and to put them across correctly to the other party, and at the same time you could relay information to us in a way that was easily understandable, by us. So we did not feel that difference at all, and that was, for me, I think, the one of the best achievement in this entire process.
That's such a wonderful anecdote. Dan, you want to catch up on that remark and tell us about your offices in Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia, and your friends globally? Being somebody who's a third culture kid and then working in a cross cultural environment must be very unique. So, why don't you tell us something about that?
It may have been unique, but I don't think it's a choice anymore. I think we're all now catapulted into this working globally, working remotely. I think it's so necessary. I would struggle to think of someone that does not have family, friends, or colleagues that live in another country. And so the quicker we learn to engage with different people, different cultures, the better we all will be. I would say I might have had a leg up, a little bit of advanced practice when I was growing up because of my parents' jobs as a diplomat. But this is something you got to keep relearning all the time because the rules of the game keep changing all the time, right? Cultures are changing so quickly, expectations are changing so quickly. So I think this is one of the constant challenges, but also blessings. And so I would say couple quick thoughts on working remotely. The rules differ. How I run the office in UAE is so radically different from how I run my office in Ireland. It probably is better for me to give some specific examples than making abstract statements. So, for example, I know in UAE, so let's talk about Monday morning meetings, all right? So first up in the Monday morning, we're all there, the team, my local team are there. How we run the meeting looks radically different. In India, for example, they all call me sir. Even though I keep telling them, my name is Dan, they will all call me sir up to this day. In Ireland, I am Dan, I am mate, I am anything casual and informal. When I'm in Germany, they don't even bother addressing my name. It's just about let's get work done. So it's just like, all right, so agenda for today. You know, there's no real like addressing. And obviously, I'm making stereotypes, but these are actual anecdotes from. I mean, there's differences in even the Irish, and there's differences even among the Indian. But overall, when I'm talking about how my Monday morning meetings run, I know in UAE and India, we plan the first. It's a 30-minute meeting. We probably spend 15 to 20 minutes doing small talk. Same in Ireland. In Ireland, we talk about the weather, we talk about the weekend, we talk about personal lives. When it comes to UAE and India, we ask about family. It's very important that I ask, how's your mother, how's your father, how's your brother, how's your husband, how's your wife, how are the children, how's school? So we go through all of the social etiquette first. Then we get to business. In Germany, we start with the business, and if we have time at the end, we'll say something like, hey, so skiing this weekend, or, you know, should I catch you, but work first, get the work done first. So I think being willing to engage differently is so crucial, right? I cannot come in saying, as a CEO, I demand this, because if I want to bring out the best in my company and among my staff, I have to be understanding and appreciating. I don't say any of what I said in a mocking tone. I say it just saying this is the uniqueness of how they are. That's just a reality of it, and I appreciate them and I recognize, and that's why I indulge in it happily, gratefully. In Ireland, I love sitting back and talking about how many sugars in the tea and coffee. It's super important. You know, oh, why are you having less sugar than last time? Everything okay? And we love that small talk. But in Germany, I won't irritate people by doing that. We'll get right into it. I'll just say, okay, so let's talk. What's the plan for this week? I'd say recognizing that every office runs differently is important. I would also say being willing to react and engage differently. In some countries, say in the US, I am more outgoing, bubbly, energetic, love to make a couple of jokes, make people feel welcome. In India, there is a little bit of a barrier between me and my staff. However much I joke and I kid with them, they like that respect of that space. And so as a result of that, I'm a little bit more reserved, a little bit more the typical, like, all right, here's what we're doing. So I just think this is important. And by the way, these rules keep changing because my team also keeps changing. My Indian group are seeing more and more of my content. I'm very active on social media. I create stories all the time. I put out videos all the time. So they're watching that and they're adapting and growing as well. And so I want to bring them to wherever they want to go to. And not to say that we also don't have an important role in challenging things, right? So just because I'm accepting of all local culture does not mean that I endorse all of it. And sometimes I think we have to challenge it. There is a very strong class system in India, very strong class system. And so when my maid comes or when the gardener comes, there is an expected way to talk to them, and there's an expected way that they talk to me. I challenge that because in many ways it does not make me feel comfortable. But I've learned the hard way that maybe I was also wrong. And even though I might have come from a good place about we treat everyone equal, I realize, oh, by the way, Vas, can you mute yourself for a second? I just hear a very long, loud hiss. There we go. Super. Thank you. You know, when I engage with the local crew here in maybe a German or American approach, it actually does not work out so well for me or for them. And so I think it's just important to know when to challenge, when to press, but also when to pull back and say, okay, that's just the way it is. I work a lot in some strict Muslim countries where there's, it would not be appropriate for me to meet even my own staff if she's female, one-on-one over a cup of coffee. It doesn't work. it's just not supposed to do that. Even though they're my staff, even they might be my family, it's just not appropriate in those cultures for me to do that or to be seen doing that. And so I'll just say, all right, let's bring 3 or 4 people together, right? And we'll just have a group coffee. And as much as I might want to do a one-on-one coffee because I need to talk about them and audit their work, we do it as a group. And so just knowing when to push and when to pull, when to give, when to take, when to challenge, and when to go, all right, let me grow and learn as well. I think those are just important mindsets when it comes to working across cultures.
Thank you so much, Dan. Going from informality to formality, Monica, how can EU-India knowledge partnerships lead the global narrative on sustainability?
I will start by building a bit on what Dan said and just maybe showcasing how our dynamic in our team. So I work across 4 continents at the moment with Australia, Mexico, and India. And we are a very informal team. A lot of our work has to be done remotely because of the constant need for meetings and working on different concepts, developing those. And we've reached such an interesting cultural dynamic. It's really, really a sweet melting pot where we learn. We have these sessions of sharing particular or talking about particular topics that are taboos in certain cultures or things that are expected from women. Oh, I have a full women's team, not because I wanted that. It wasn't something that I targeted. It is something that happened. We're very open to have men on our team as well, but it seems to be that cultural IP is something that women want to do. Sustainability is something that they are more attracted to. And so we have these conversations and we have grown so much individually as humans as well. I think it's important to always go and look at the business etiquette. Of course, diplomacy teaches us that these rules that are culturally ingrained are extremely important and important to follow those. But it's really important for building future economies and building future societies to also look at these intersections. For example, Romania. Italy is an amazing country, but Romania is also a very beautiful country. It has also it has sea, it has all kinds of different streams, it has mountains, it has everything. And what it has, and is so special to me, is that we are more connected to India than I ever thought we were. So I grew up at my great-grandparents' house, and many of the things we were doing or how the household was managed. And I got to see that connection and that kind of community feeling when I went to India. And I was not expecting that. And everybody was looking at me, at this white girl, thinking that I come really from the West, but no, Romania is in Eastern Europe and we have a totally different culture than what people may think about us probably. This concept of white privilege was so foreign to me because we've always been actually colonized ourselves, or we have been suppressed from the Ottoman Empire or the Austrian Habsburg Empire. So we were never actually conquering anyone. We were just a culture that we tried to keep our identity alive in a very special intersection in Europe. I divagated a bit with that just to basically show how connected we are as an ecosystem and how this aspect of sustaining cultures is extremely important. And then when we look at the global narrative on sustainability, we always see, and now we see this triple bottom line. We see planet, people, profit, great. People don't talk so much about culture. There is a lot of useful information in the way we do things. I call it culturally embedded sustainability practices. There's so much in the way things are done in certain countries that could be embraced and cooperated on at an international level. And I work a lot with the fashion industry, which is mainly the industry that I work in. And we talk about how to eliminate waste or how fashion, fast fashion is destroying the planet. And then you look at a sari, and yes, I wear saris because they are a non-waste fabrics. There's no like centimeter of fabric that is being lost in this kind of design. And there are Romanian traditional outfits as well. And you have these like the kurtas, you have all this a different aesthetic that could be so beautiful if we all wanted maybe to get a little out of the Cartier suits and get into outfits that are less focused on, you know, 7 sizes of a body, but actually you can wrap yourself in your own identity. And I think this is where we are building the narratives of including cultural sustainability, not only in fashion and when it comes to fashion, but we're talking about ways of purifying and recycling water. We are talking about how to build better spaces to live. We are talking about health management and integrating, you know, yoga and other practices that are healthy. We're talking about Ayurvedic diets. We are talking about a lot of knowledge that is embedded in the cultures that are on this planet and through which we can develop sustainable economies. So businesses that can be built on this kind of knowledge exchange.
Thank you so much, Monica. Valentina, quick question. You've been probably involved in a business that is most affected by the pandemic because it's least, you know, you can't really do events. You can do events online, but it's not the same thing. So tell us more about your experience during the pandemic and what is, more importantly, what is your outlook towards the future?
Sure. So yes, our business, either though I don't consider art as really a business, like it's more of a life mission, so it can never die. It's been affected, like weddings and events. So we have to patiently wait. And regarding art, so we've been shift all the classes online, which actually you have always to see. So your glass half full instead of half empty. So actually first I was very distressed and, you know, very sad, because it was like, what to do, what are we doing now? But as Indian philosophy teaches us, like we should stay connected with our own soul. So this period of time, you know, make us all, you know, more thoughtful. And actually what happened in my dance is that I connected with more people, so my business got better because I was having, you know, more online events. So we start doing shows online. We start doing classes with people that I would never been able to attend classes, you know, the dance gurus or lectures, or, you know, the ashram I went in India were doing stuff online. So after the initial, you know, sad part, it starts the good part. So and now that everything slowly is opening up, we see a lot of new opportunities in terms of, you know, dance or art classes. And now events are slowly, you know, starting again. So I would say it was a gift, a very important challenge for us, because if you were not into this for passion, truly from your soul and art, you would have not been able to do it. So I guess whoever was not doing this purely and genuinely has stopped, and whoever has stayed, it's gonna be more powerful and more strong. Also, I want to say, like, this is a summit, right? Like, we are all together, and it's an important concept in dance. In Kathak, we call it sam, when in Hindustani music, like when, because rhythm are circular, no, in India, like the karma stuff and reincarnation. So summit comes from the word sam, and this is important, like to just go back there, no matter what.
Thank you so much for such a positive outlook on the situation. Yes, definitely glass half full, not empty. Chiara, you're doing a postgraduate on the sociology of organizations. That sounds complicated. So why don't you give us some theory to match with the practice?
All right. Yes, it might sound complicated, and especially at this time after we have been online for a few hours, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Firstly, 2 years ago now, I came across this program and I thought it was perfectly fitting in my experience, because sociology of organizations tries to combine the teachings of sociology, but to the organization environment, be it for internal functioning as well as for external functioning. And one of the main subjects of this program, which I'm majoring in by September, hopefully, it's called Sociology of Markets and Management, and it deals with two aspects. That is, on one side, how humans operate in the context of a group, which in this case is a culture, like we are talking about culture and trade between Europe and India, and our behavior when making transactions, which is what we can call an economic action. Now, in generic parlance, in generic mindset, these two aspects are often kept separate. That is, we think that when we are making an economic decision, this decision is based on logic and calculation. So we think about the price and, you know, we think about certain things, but this is not actually true, or not fully true, because our very own calculations are based on what is acceptable or not acceptable to us or to our cultures. And this, it can happen, and it does happen, that some products which have, for example, all the right economic or financial qualities, so the right pricing or the right regulatory compliance, or just like Nayan said in the previous panel, you know, the right IP address for a certain market, etc., they might be in place, and still that product might not appeal to the target audience. So one can say, okay, why? And this is where the social considerations come into play. And on top of this, there was another point that a few hours ago, earlier today, Lord Hannon from UK made. You know, he spoke about you know, internet and trade and all this topic. And here I thought about a quote from a sociologist called Pascal Chantela, and he wrote a paper called The New Economic Sociology, where he exactly touched upon this point. He said, today, with the internet, and I would add also with the pandemic and everything moved online. But the problem is that all these exchanges are minimal, they are discontinued, and they're often impersonal. And the main point here is, how do we overcome this geographical, but also this social distance with the people that we are dealing with? It can be India, but it can be the world. So, and that's where the social considerations again come into play. So joining back what I said a few minutes ago, that we don't only calculate the price or the guarantee, etc. What we do is actually we calculate, that is, we attach also a quality tag to the product or the service that we are dealing with. And this is not me saying it's a sociological research, okay? So I'm just quoting what I've learned, but which I found very, very interesting too, because in my experience as a consultant, we used to say, okay, this is how you deal with selling certain products in India, etc. But I didn't know that there was all this actual research done on it. And when I came across this term, calculation, that is, you calculate based on the quality that you perceive, because quality itself is not, it doesn't go by itself. The quality is perceived by me, and by me as a person living in a certain cultural context. And the easiest example that we can make is packaging. Why certain packaging work in a certain environment and why they don't work in another environment. And what Monica said just a while ago was, you know, goes in the same line. She spoke about, we don't look at the artisan who has made a certain product, because we are, in our calculation, we are not used to include that particular item in the calculation or calculation list. And in our individual capacities, we should be working in the directions that we are doing, so that all this, you know, different items become a little bit more balanced, or at least they are put into public knowledge. So that's my view on this.
Thank you so much, Kara. Very interesting. Dan, final question. Top tips on building cultural relationships.
Oh boy, you saved the hardest one for the ending. Gosh, top tips for building cultural relations. I might have started with this, so it's sometimes nice to kind of end how you begin. Ask questions, don't assume, and that's super important. Have a deep, Vas, can I ask you to mute yourself again? There's just a lot of background sound there. So, making sure that you respect yourself and you respect the other. They both are valid. They both are true. They both have much to benefit from each other, not in isolation. I think that's a really important one. I think third, leaving yourself open to adapt, to evolve, to keep growing and keep changing. I think that's super important as well. I think for me, because I'm in a place of leadership, and I think everyone in this group is in a place of leadership, being responsible for cultural adaptation, I think is another thing we got to put at the mantle. I don't think it's enough to just be a good leader or to be a good boss or to be efficient. I think we are responsible for our communities to be a driving force, to enlighten, excite people about what happens when you do cross borders, when you do build across to what is foreign, what is different. I also think on a personal level, read, watch movies, engage in dance and music and art, ask questions, challenge the status quo, step out of the comfort zone. As I'm listening to my panelists, I'm thinking a lot about, all right, what have I done recently to force myself to, because I think the learning is for life, right? I don't think just because I'm on a panel today means I've figured it out. Absolutely not. And I think the more that I was listening, Monica, I love Romania, by the way, and I actually started my speaking journey in Bucharest. My first ever gig was over there, and it's such a understated country. It's so rich and so much, but who would have ever guessed that I had a Romanian story to me? And yet it has spoken so much into my life and given me so much. And that's because I stepped out of the comfort zone. There was a lovely lady in Romania. It was like, I've got some young, enthusiastic founders. Can you come and coach them for 3 days? It was such a culture shock to fly across. I had to lose some of the stereotypes and what people told me of Romania and just really engage with what was there. And it was life-changing. And that's not even an exaggeration. And so I think on a daily basis, on a personal basis, we should step out of the comfort zone. We should listen to the music and the art and the Netflix shows and the podcasts of other countries, listen to other opinions. I think we'll be much richer. I think the world will be a much richer place when we do that.
Guys, I would ask one last question to all of you, if you're comfortable answering it, and probably might not have an answer. But is there more cultural sensitivity needed working with India than working with other countries? And this one I'll start with Dan because he's in India, as he said. So let's start with Dan and then let's go through the other panelists quickly.
More, no, but I do think maybe more filters because India is such a massive country. So there aren't other countries that, there aren't many countries that have over 1.5 billion people in it. There aren't other countries, as many countries that have been formed by multiple other nations coming together. So you have to add the filter of different cultures and nations and languages and all of that. You have to add the filter of pretty recent colonial power. And what does that do? You have to add the filter of a very ancient nation. There's a lot of filters that you got to add, but is it more complex or anything else of that sort? No, I think we have to be fair when crossing borders and engaging other cultures, but maybe we just apply different kinds of filters in order to understand and appreciate.
Thanks, Dan. Monica, what would you say?
I think in general, it's important to look really fairly at the other and try to take down the stereotypes, the prejudgments. We're so much impressed by clothing and status. This is still happening. This is a real thing. We don't sit there and really listen deeply. We don't listen. We it happens still in panels today. Like I've done so many panels this year that, you know, even amongst ourselves, we don't really listen to what the other really has to say. We're already starting to focus on our next question. And that's the same thing about being present. And when you are there, or what I do always, and it's life-changing for me as well, then I guess India and Romania are life-changing for people who kind of get to immerse in the culture. Like Chiara was saying, cultural immersion, when I go to India, I immerse completely. And I try to lose everything I know about everything. And it has opened for me places and sources of knowledge that I never knew existed. Obviously, I had those filters in me somewhere because otherwise they couldn't have been opened. So it's about really looking at the people in front of you and trying to grasp everything, to understand the connection with nature, to understand their connection to business. Why are they worried about that? And yes, trying to discuss honestly, why are you doing this? Why is this? Because I might be interpreting it very, very differently. So I don't think there's more sensitivities. I think what is amazing as a foreigner coming to a new culture, what I would tell people who are not from India would be to just immerse and stop like getting all the misconceptions they see on TV out. And as a fact, I've been very adamant in Romania. There's this show that didn't depict an India I knew and experienced, and everyone was asking me these super insensitive, horrible questions, and I actually made a statement. I was like, you have no clue, and the fact that you are, you know, portraying a country just based on something that puts a show on, it's absolutely, I even kind of like all everywhere I was going and I was hearing about the show, I was like, you have to stop, this is not okay. And if I had time, I would just like write an official complaint, but I would have needed more support to do that. But literally, it's about always when you hear things that are not, and you know someone, you should always step up for them as well and say, this is not really what happens. And we have to put more focus and energy into understanding really other cultures and how they work.
Thanks, Monica. Valentina?
Yeah, nothing more to add, but yes, just I would like to import the examples of India here in Italy to be more inclusive, to be more multicultural, intercultural. And what was saying Monica, like in Italy, I don't know if Chiara know, there was a program like, not Italian Got Talent anyway, they were portraying a comic actor dressed up as Shiva, doing a very funny dance on Beyonce. So we have to put up a case. So my Italian and international dance community come together. We reached out to the TV show and they public apologize for doing this, because Italy is very traditional society. We are not used much to a really, as I said, diversity. Yeah, we are like in the middle of Mediterranean. We were conquered by many people, but still we are very, this is similar to India. We are very, oh, Italians. So, but I was glad that I had a community, that I had with many people in the world, and that we could be, you know, able to point this out, like you are, you should not do that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Chiara, would you like to add something?
Well, I agree with what everyone else has said, and there are a few things that I thought in between. So one is that every time you talk to someone like this panel or people who have had the similar experiences, we all agree on, you know, how to look at a country that, okay, you don't know, like leave your judgments aside, otherwise you will never go anywhere. And to join back your question, like, does India need more attention in terms of understanding? There are two things that came to my mind. So one is that firstly, depends who is looking, who is, you know, what is your point of view? You know, what kind of cultural background you're coming from. And secondly, when I moved from India to Europe, I was not expecting to have such a cultural shock, because I had spent the last 7 years in India, I was totally used to, the way of working in India, way of dealing with other professionals in India. And when I came here, I think for a good 1.5 years, I was like, okay, wait, I'm still not able to adjust. So I think every new country that you approach yourself to needs an equal amount of considerations, and especially for an Italian to live in France, one could say, okay, that's so simple, and yet it was quite tough initially. And maybe when we look at India, we could say that, okay, maybe there are more things that you should be looking at that maybe they don't come to your mind initially. Like when I am addressing France and I try to understand the local context, there are certain areas that I would be looking at. And for India, maybe there are many more that I cannot think of because I'm not part of that background. So maybe that could be a consideration to make, or like a thought that one should have in mind. But as such, I think we all agree on the same thing, and I'm glad to see that.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you all for such a wonderful panel. I had a great time. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself as well. Back to you, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vas. You articulated the moderation beautifully. I would say if the first panel discussion was more of brains, this was more of heart. And this panel discussion is close to my heart because I was the cultural ambassador to Britain 20 years ago. And I started teaching cross-cultural understanding. So what comes out beautifully is a lovely thread that puts everybody together. Is everybody agreed about the immersion, and then not making judgments, no premonitions. And then I think you'll have to immerse yourself with the ground realities. Dan is somebody who's had, immersed himself into various cultures. So he's very, very articulate with what happens in each place. Beautifully brought out, Dan. And I think 4 of you are now in Italy, or 3 of you. So I think the old adage that says, when you're in Rome, be a Roman, goes well. I think wherever you are, understand the local culture and try to adapt to it. And then absolutely, as I said, no animosities. Beautiful. And all of you have done a great job. If people have any questions, we will take questions from the participants and the other people if they have any specific questions. And later, I would like to have a dialogue with all of you if you wish to, and then formally close the session. Any questions, please?
Okay, so I think we're taking questions. Was needs probably leave now, so you can continue taking the questions.
Sure, we can take the questions. Anirudh Tripathi has raised the hand. Anirudh, you could ask your question.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Anirudh Tripathi. I'm from Nagpur, India. I'm an academician and a student of international relations. First of all, I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their experiences and knowledge. It was very thoughtful, enriching, and inspiring. I have a question for Monica, since she is involved in the field of IPR. Monica, could you please share your thought about how we can reconcile between free trade practices or intellectual property regime with the goals of a welfare state? Like there have been cases or instances of compulsory licensing or evergreening of patents. And these are the bone of contention between the free trade agreement between India and European Union. So can you share light on this?
I think to go into the depths of the free trade agreement between India and the European Union right now, it's beyond my expertise at the moment to respond to this question in a panel. But what I can say, I mean, that would be, it really needs a lot more. I think maybe an individual discussion would be better. But to kind of give a bit of intake, there is at the moment, obviously, a big discrepancy between what, let's say, India can protect with conventional IP tools and what the EU countries in general can protect with conventional IP tools. A lot what is being created in India still, a huge part of Indian economy falls under adequate protection with IP tools. And the fact that we have a trade agreement that talks about IP doesn't stop us to come up with tools to protect that side of the economy that is not protected by conventional IP tools. When I talk about patenting, right, there have been so many cases when also I think European patents on, for example, or attempts to patent even the turmeric. I think that, I don't know if that wasn't a US case, but anyway, at the moment, India has a traditional knowledge database. So there are certain recipes, especially Ayurvedic recipes, that are in this database, and it has a defensive role, so that when patent requests are being submitted, this database is accessible to the patent offices so that they don't grant a patent for something like that. We don't have this case when it comes to all kinds of textiles. You see a lot of fake Banarsi saris being sold around the world. You see a lot of fake ikat, you see a lot of fake adrak, you see, and this is where I talk about where IP tools are not really functioning well. The geographical indication, yes, it's strong for agricultural products, for cognac, for champagne, for all kind of foods and drinks. It does not have strong coverage on textiles. It will never have, because it's not meant for that type of products. So I think this is a systemic inequality that we're talking about in the first place. And then we can talk about a trade agreement, but a trade agreement built on a systemic inequality when it comes to IP, it is definitely something that needs more discussion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica, for giving clarity on that and protecting the interest of the people with their intellectual property rights. Wonderful. And we have Vijay Natarajan raising his hand for questioning. Yes, Vijay Natarajan, you could go ahead. What is your question, and to whom is your question? Yes, Vijay Natarajan, you could ask your question. Are you muted? Vijay Natarajan, you can ask. I think maybe his voice is not coming through. So Vijay Natarajan will come back if there are no more questions, or we'll take other questions, please.
I have another question.
Yes, may I know who's this?
Aniruddha Tripathi.
Yes,
it's a follow-up with it's a follow-up for Monica only. Hello,
Yes.
Monica. Thank you for the answer, first of all. And as you have already mentioned, there have been cases like turmeric patents or neem patents and things like that. Or for example, Fibonacci series have been mentioned, like attributed to that he have gained knowledge from Africa. Or for example, quote unquote, Arabic numericals. So can you please tell me, how do we grant recognition or intellectual property rights to these kind of traditional knowledge or products, and to the rightful owners, and who will be the rightful owner?
Yeah, very good question. So that's what we do at the Cultural Intellectual Property Rights Initiative. Come join our debates, come check our website. This is where you find how we do that, because that's what we are. We are building a system. Obviously, you cannot claim, and this historical claiming of who invented first what is always going to be like, there's a lot of politics involved. But we are now looking at realistically creating a system that is supporting, we are looking at, of course, the sustainable development goals we have in mind. We're looking at poverty alleviation, and taking cases specific cases. If we talk about textiles, is it a fair and equitable system that Western fashion companies do not have to suffer any repercussions when they identically copy the aesthetic of design that comes from an artisan community or from a local community? Is that something that has common sense in it? No. I mean, now the discussions that are about who invented what first, that's a lot of institutions that have this role and this responsibility to promote and protect the cultural heritage of a certain country. That's a UNESCO more space, and that's not legal protection. That is another kind of a policy. So when it comes to legal protection, we also have to take into account elements of economic viability. We have to take into account, supply chains, how they work. And here we have solutions. We have a rule. We created a rule, actually, a set of best practices. It's called the 3 C's rule: consent, credit, compensation. And this rule was created not just by me inventing the rule, but it's based on existing international treaties and legal principles that are recognized around the world. So, for example, the Convention on the Protection of Biodiversity and the Nagoya Protocol that talks about access, fair access and benefit sharing when someone uses natural resources. These natural resources could be, like teas, for example. Assam tea is a natural resource. It's grown in that region. Communities know how it's being, so why should just, I don't know, a Lipton company be able to sell the tea? Of course, there's a contract in place, the community gets something back, they are asked for consent, and there are legal mechanisms in place. They just need to be widely spoken of, and they need to be requested by these communities. So it's time for the communities to say, we are no longer gonna give our designs to everyone and let those be copied. We want to be respected. We want our consent to be part, and we want to be involved in creating these products so that the minimum set of conditions is fulfilled. So that's the only way to start somewhere, to basically do advocacy for having a system at an international level. The World Intellectual Property Rights Organization is working for almost 40 years on 2 treaties, or maybe 1 treaty in the end, but they are still negotiating. It's 40 years still ongoing of discussion on a treaty to protect traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions. But that's obviously taking a long time because each government has a different position. And I think it has to start with practical business behavior and practices, and that will generate law, just like Facebook and Uber and all the disruptors of the industry. We have to disrupt this inequality in the IP system.